Hi all and welcome to the newly named channel of PrometheanBryce. Just a quick note, it's a name change. I know I changed recently, but this is more going to cover everything rather than just the sculpture side of things, as I've decided to go a bit more into the freelance rather than selling on, say, just the Etsy's. So I'll be now selling models for either printing, eventually for animation, and doing just much more videos that vary from clay to sculpting to possibly even gaming videos at some point, and maybe back to some ASMR at some point. So we'll check it out. Well, anyway, so what I'm doing now is I'm going to just commentate over these videos that I've done when it comes to the sculpting side of things, the digital sculpting anyway. I'll probably just have it depends on what happens with the clay. It could be similar, but yeah, just to start off, there's just going to be this will be the first in basically a series. I'm just going to keep doing sculpts to practice and get better within myself, and obviously the more content I've got to give to you, so you can either print them like I will be printing mine, or you can eventually, like I said, want to get them in the T poses or the A poses for you to weight paint and animate, or possibly myself animate at some point. So yeah, like I said, this is just going to be a commentary video, and I'll just basically get to it. So what I'm started out doing here was just putting the reference photos in, just like a classic 3D model. I used to do animation back in university, and that's how I learned how to do it. Obviously now with sculpting, I've gone a completely different route. I feel like I did stop sort of modeling for the most part, just because it was a little bit time consuming and not as fun as I would like to have been. But obviously over the years, software's changed. Now you can sculpt in pretty much anything like Blender, like I'm using here, or some of the ones even on my tablet. Yeah, I just find it just a bit more easier and a bit more fun, because it's, like I said, I started doing the clay again and selling that, and sort of just taking it digital is kind of nice. So yeah, so this one is Blackcat, and I've got, as you can see, I've got a reference from the sort of old comics. And at the moment I'm sort of going for a really basic set with the tools, the sphere tool and the cylindrical tool, just to get that basic shape in. In future videos I go straight to the sculpting rather than doing this. When I say straight to the sculpting, I mean I won't be doing it with the base mesh and then turn it into a mesh, which I'm doing right now. Which I've done this, I'll turn it into a sculpting mesh and then continue. But from now on, I've got it straight as that sort of mesh that's ready to sculpt. I use the move tool to move it into place and continue sculpting. But like I said, this is just the different way. As you can see here, what I've done when I've done certain ones together, which I think are done or need to be attached, I'll just before sculpting it, I'll boolean the item into the secondary one, so just by selecting the boolean tools down the side, and then after it's booleaned, I use the smooth tool to smooth out the corners. Now sometimes those corners won't come out quite neat, as you may have saw previously just on the video. That's just because the two meshes are so different that they need to be either very similar in terms of the subdivision, and even so sometimes it can mess up. But if it is doing that, just do what I do and just get to the tool section, which is like this section here that's on the screen. Just go down a bit and there'll be a section that says remesh, and just remesh it as close as you can to the original, so as low as a figure as you can. It might be high in poly, but you're going to be editing that later anyway, so it's fine in the poly count. But it just gives you an option to smooth it then and not have to worry too much about it. So yeah, so as you can see, I've started modeling here, so I'm just getting that even better basic shape, and then adding towards that, putting some of a basic level of muscle detail, or just basic level of detail in general, depending on what your character is. So as Blackcat's quite semi-muscular, I've obviously got those particular sections in, But I'll go over that later as well to make it a little bit more in depth, depending on how I feel it looks. But sometimes it's just as good. Like if I'm doing an anime character, that'll be quite easy to do in that point. So with this particular one, I haven't done the hands or the feet yet, just because I now do them pretty much at the same time and have a base. But I did this a little bit different because I'm obviously learning again. Like I said, I've only just started coming back. Let's just have a look quick. So yeah, so I'm basically getting that all together. Now here, what I'm doing now is just creating those sort of furry. I'm not sure what you would call them, but those furry bits to the side and around the neck. Obviously, everything I've done as it's in that pose, I can copy and paste it over to the other side, so not have to worry about it, which helps later. But when it does, I've left it into sections. So if you haven't noticed, I haven't joined certain things, just because I'm going to be moving that later to pose it. But here we go. So I'm just moving this part here, messing it around a bit with the tools, making it sort of thing. You don't have to. I'm not ever exact with this, like perfectly exact. I find it hard to do. I mean, maybe in the future I'll get better and better at it, like I said. But I do like a sort of my own take on things, and not to mention the fact that sometimes the reference can be a little bit off. So there's that. So this is me doing the hand separate. This is the old way. I wouldn't recommend doing it this way that I'm doing on screen. So if you are using this for, say, a tutorial, I mean, it wouldn't be the best tutorial anyway. It's more of, like I said, it's just showing my work going on, seeing a basic sort of how things are done. But yeah, I used the box method that's similar to what I did with the start of this one, which I found was a little bit silly because in the end it made it much more complicated than it needed to be. And it just looked a bit more silly. So eventually I get it sorted out, but you'll see over this next coming few minutes, A, that it took longer, bearing in mind this has been sped up quite a lot, but B, it's just not ideal because it's too harsh. Doing it like I am doing this face, for example, makes it a lot easier. But here we go, look. So I was trying to smooth the tools off at first and then move it around, but as you can see, it takes me a lot longer than it should, and it just doesn't look that nice, especially at the moment. I had to do about, in this particular one, I don't know if I recorded it all because some of them I'm thinking up just to make it shorten it down a bit. I've tried to put it all in, obviously, but as I was recording it. But yes, I've done it all as one here, which is just, like I said, I wouldn't recommend. I say do it like any other sculpt, build it in parts, join it together and neaten it that way. Also, like I said, for future reference, in my next videos, obviously, like I said, I'm going to keep doing these. I've already got the next one recorded, which will be an Earthworm Gym. But in that video, I'll show you how I do it separately, and it just makes it a lot simpler. At the end of the day, you can sculpt it easier, takes less time, and when you're positioning it for a sculpt like I do in these first couple ones, it's a lot better. Now, like I said, later on, I'm going to start doing two versions. One will be the animation version and one will be the posed version. So the posed version will just be done fully and separate, and then the animation version will be in a pose, closed up, and that. Just no real emotion to it, just like the pose that you can put your skeleton and your weight paint in, or like I said, eventually down the line I'll probably learn how to do it myself, because I did just do it a bit. Like I said, I used to do the animation. It's just I used to use Maya, not Blender, on that subject. I would really recommend Blender because it's essentially the same thing. You're not paying thousands of pounds or dollars wherever you live, and you can essentially get the same stuff. Now, I'd say it's a little bit more complex, Blender, to get to those basic things, whereas in Maya they're kind of a one-shot thing. Like a boolean, you can just press boolean and it'll cut it out for you, whereas in Blender you have to go to the sections, put a boolean on, and then you have to join it, then you have to take the previous one away because it will duplicate it, and it's just a bit more of an annoying process, but it's not gonna be enough to say for me to spend that money. I mean, obviously if you like using that software, because like I said, I was using it a long time ago, I'd probably still use a bit of it now. I just had to use different software to get started again. So yeah, as you can see with this hand, there's another thing I'll mention actually. You saw those hands connect together. Basically, that's just because when you connect those hands together with a boolean, it will join the closest mesh that's next to it. So that's another thing I just wouldn't recommend doing. It will join the mesh together. So all you want to do is separate the fingers by a slight amount and take the boolean down to the lowest you can take. Obviously, if your processor's slow or you haven't got much of a power in your PC, it's going to be a lot harder. But if you're learning to sculpt, you can sacrifice that by just doing it as one mesh and get the basic shape. And then when you're down the line, you'll probably get a better computer anyway. So as you can see, I'm splitting the fingers apart on this section just from that the entire thing I was just telling you about, just so you can actually model it together without joining. Obviously, you don't want your fingers to mesh together like it's some kind of webbing. Obviously, that doesn't look correct. So now we're onto the foot. Same exact process as I did before. A lot of feet on reference come slightly to the side, so when you're doing a foot, just try and get a reference from, say, a different website and get that basic shape. Again, it doesn't have to be 100% exact to this reference, just make sure it looks similar or how you want it to look, obviously. So as you can see there, I was double taking just to make sure everything looked in that basic shape. So again, like I said, this is the first one, so this will change over the next coming videos, but here I'm doing a face all as one, whereas in the future I will separate sections just to make it easier, my personal way of doing things. But so it's just cutting into the face, getting that general face shape. If I was going to say one of the hardest things to model would actually be the face, just because it's hard to get those angles, and the reference is pretty hard to tell sometimes just from a front and side view. So again, it's just looking at those. If you've got, say, like a toy or something around, just have a look at that and you can get the basic shape. But like I said, because I was doing the clay before this, it really helped me get that sort of basic feel for it. And even then, I'm struggling with it myself, so I can understand. But it's just practice. Practice makes perfect. So here I've done the eyes separate, put them across. I've done the eyelids separate, which again later on I'm going to boolean all these together so it will look better. As for this particular face, I left it quite basic, and then later on through the video I did actually change it. But that's something you're going to come across a lot, where you'll think one day that it's fine, you'll look the next day and you'll want to make improvements, but you're always going to want to make improvements. Just has to give that general look. But if you saw right there how it, when I sort of remeshed it, it made that sort of not very smooth, crumbly look. That's again something you want to avoid by bringing that boolean section and the remesh section all the way down to the lowest value. But again, not too low if your computer's not very powerful, just because it's going to overload it with vertices and segments, or as they call it, polygons. So this is before I'm basically still learning how to use the tools to make clothes. The original way I did this was doing it blocky, like I said. It's less smooth and it takes a little bit more time. And again, like I said, I've only just been in the software a little while. Since I've actually fixed this little issue that we're looking at right now, I've done this a very long way, a very convoluted way. Like I said, getting that base mesh ready to go into the details by doing the hair. Whereas nowadays, I actually use the curve tools, like most people, to get that sort of layers of hair. But again, I'll go through that once I do a video where I show that, because I did do a video. I was planning on doing one video, but I forgot to press record a couple of times, so and that was on this anime girl, which you can actually get in my shop eventually. But yeah, I should be doing one soon. I plan on doing a Supergirl, and that one will have a similar feature, so I'll show that in that video. Obviously, as this is a video, it could be up now already, but if it's just come on, obviously it's not going to be for the next couple of weeks. So yeah, as you can see now, that first one didn't look very good, and after I did that back here, I felt like the moving of the sculpt section was actually easier to get that flow, so I changed the front again, and then I used the carving tools to make that sort of indent to make it look like there's more hair. This is where I was talking about where I was doing the extra face bits, because sometimes you'll find that once you put, say, a hair or a set of clothes on, it will look a little bit different to what you think, because it's just getting that sort of different perspective as time goes on, and that's when you just move on. But again, you don't have to delete it. You just got to be a little bit more careful and just edit it. Everything's always about editing things just a tiny bit, adding clay, taking away clay, or in this case, using the Moor tool, which is my main tool, which is the little sort of curvy thing. Not this one on the screen at the moment, but when I get to it, I'll show. But this one, that tool was just to pull that little bit of mesh out to make it look like pointy hair. Okay, so yep, so it's just like I said, as you can see, it's constantly going around the whole model, making it just making it as close as I can to the reference or how I feel it should be. Just a quick note at this point, I know it's a bit late in, but as I'm doing this commentary from start to finish, just forgive me if I'm making a few, like repeating myself or making a few errors, just because I want it to be as natural as I'm going along. Like I said, I just don't want it to be boring and just see the video. Some of you might want to watch the video anyway and mute me anyway, but that's perfectly fine. So this is after I've done that knee section. I've gone down to the leg and made it look a bit more like cloth, bending it in, folding it in, and then it's more to do with the hands again, just because, like I said, even when I did this, I still didn't particularly like the hands too much. But it's just trying to make them look a little bit better. Adding those creases in, adding the depth a bit more, a bit of fingernail, stuff like that. And then joining them to the wrist as best you can. And I just curved the nails a little bit here because Blackcat has a little bit longer fingernails, but they're still under the gloves. I don't know if you quite noticed in the background, but you can see a few of the hands. Sometimes if I made a face or an item, I'll duplicate them and stick it to the side, and that's just so if I feel like I've edited it too much to the point of no return and it's not as good, I'll just take away the new one, add the old one back. It's as simple as that. Like I said, with processor speed and all that, I've got a pretty powerful computer and even mine slows down. I'm actually going to get a new one soon anyway. Not because the computer is bad at all. It's a really good computer. It's just that I just need that little bit more power. But like I said, if you yourself coming from this and having a watch and going, oh, it's a good idea, just be aware that you'll need sort of like a gaming card, something like I have a RTX 260, so it's not the newest, but it's enough to play games at a heavy level, and games are based on polygons and stuff, so the better the graphics card, the more power it's going to have. And then at the moment I've got an i5. I want to upgrade that to at least an i7 newer one. Again, this is a couple of years old, so. But you basically, if I was going to tell you what you need, you'd need at least an i7 newest and a graphics card that's at, 1 or 2 generations closer, just to get that power. But if you're in this field anyway, you probably know a lot about sort of computers for the most part, so you probably don't need that advice anyway. So here I was just making the neck. I did the clothes a little bit different on these first two. I now try and stick them out a bit more because I'm animation conscious. With a sculpt, you can sculpt the clothes in. It's not really an issue. Or if you're just a character where you want it just a nice fun character, it's not much of an issue, that's fine. But let's say I was doing this for an animation, that neck is going to cause a problem because you want to be able to sort of take it off and show it if it's damaged or something, and you're not going to be able to do that if you have it sort of one whole mesh. So you want to try and get it so it actually looks like a belt, even if it's a little bit out. This is something I'll go through later, just to it's a little bit easier to show than it is to tell you. Now, in this original one, because I didn't separate them, I've had to use the bend tool. It's called the pose tool, sorry. And you just can bend the fingers and certain bits of mesh. It's very hard to use, and I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. Okay, so this is what I'm saying before. So I built a little topper up there for it to sit on, based on the reference I was using. And then I've got these sections, and I've just moved around each bit by bit. So you can move the bit of the forearm, bit of the hand, your placer. You get your best placement as you can. You keep working on it. Don't worry too much about exacts, because you can use your move tool to just put them in there, the muscles in their exact positions, or in later, like for example this butt, I'm going to be doing a little bit different. But yeah, just spend a little bit of time tweaking them. Could take a little while, but it's worth doing just to get the exact positions ready to move around. Look, see how I'm moving that around, just to get that shape correctly, because obviously it's going to move around a little bit because of muscle changes, and when you move things, it's obviously things change a little bit. So this is where I start to boolean the parts together after I've got the pose, and I feel like that's the adequate pose. So I boolean it, I've joined it together like I was saying. In some cases I don't need to do the remesh, which is good. But once I've done it, I've been moving her to get the other away. I've since realised that you don't actually need to do that. So in the future you'll see me not just click it and then just get rid of the other one rather than move it around. Stops me from getting any placement issues as well. So so again, the more you learn. So you're just putting it in, you're booleaning it around, and that's just what I was doing there. I didn't need to do it for certain parts of the mesh. Some things I just joined, depends where they are and how it feels. And like I said, if you go and do an animation where a piece of clothing is coming off, don't join it at all. So that's that all done. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy.